cookie if you need some sustenance. So thanks for being here. My name is Sukriti, for those of you that I know. I've come to food stores before. Glad to see you again. For those of you I don't know, glad you're here. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that's been on my mind for the last few months, and I called it my rules for life. So a few months ago, I was reading an article instead of doing my class readings, which is a pretty common thing for me. But it was Bloomberg, not BuzzFeed, so I've graduated. And it was an article called 12 Rules for Life. And of course I read it, and then I went down a real rabbit hole of other similar related articles. And it reminded me of this other one that I'd seen last summer called 15 Ways to Be a Better Person. It was a compilation of opinion pieces in the New Yorker that I really liked. And I loved it. And I did what I do when I find an article that I really like, and I sent it in sort of a blanket email to my friends and people that I love, and I asked them what their rules were for life as well. And I gave a couple of my own, and it sparked a discussion that's lasted a couple of months at this point. And I got a few responses. I was pretty surprised. People were really thoughtful, and I don't know why I was surprised. I have incredibly thoughtful friends. And I got like this response from my friend Carlin, who is incredibly brave and moved to Seattle via Chile and is a dancer. So of course her first rule is to dance every day. And her dad Jerry is an actuary. So one of her rules was also in paying homage to her father. Make sure you save money at some point. And she had kind of her 3 unbreakables that she always sort of lives by. Consume the news, consume an adequate amount of water, and always wear sunscreen. And those are pretty much all you need to live your life. I got this other one from my friend Risa, who is one of the most balanced people I know, in that she is both incredibly hardworking and disciplined, and also incredibly silly. And that's exactly what her rules reflected. Finding time to be silly because, you know, the people who matter won't mind, and the people who mind don't matter. And this one I really enjoyed. This is from my cousin Malvika, who lives in Dubai. And she said, you know what, there's no point in being a thin, angry person. If you have to choose between being happy and thin, be happy. And I'm really working on that. This one I thought was actually really good professionally. If you can't set boundaries and be liked at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. And that's a hard lesson that I've had to learn, and I think all of us are going to have to learn at some point. And then, of course, I got this answer from my old boss, Bill, who is the most OCD, engineer, logically brained person I've ever met. And I asked for 3, and he gave me 57, which were his list that he was going to give to his godson when he turned 15. He highlighted a couple that I liked. Protect the weak, do no harm, be interesting, and give the credit and take the blame. But then I kept getting more responses, and this has happened now every week or so. I get something that comes up, like this one from my friend Chandni. There's some smaller ones, you know, if you're hungry, try drinking water first. You're usually probably thirsty. But also try to do good in every single day, and make sure to make time for self-love and self-care. My old mentor, Emily, if you pack it, you carry it, both emotional baggage and otherwise. We are both consultants, and so that was a key lesson learned. Your backpack gets very heavy on Thursday evenings. Be careful of your impact versus your intent. The golden rule I heard several times, but from my friend Wade. Basically, respect other people. Take a deep breath when you're upset. It helps. You never know what anybody else is going through. Understand that you're your own biggest critic. Give yourself some room and some empathy. Empathy starts with yourself and then radiates outward. Find your passion and do your best to link it to your career. And be open to change. I like all of those. So I came up with some of my own, and I wanted to share them with you today. And I hope that we can keep this dialogue going. The first one is, life is too short to wear uncomfortable underwear, or uncomfortable pants, or uncomfortable shoes, or basically anything uncomfortable. I had a coworker in college who told me that she basically never bought an item of clothing that she couldn't do yoga in, which I thought was a little aggressive, but a pretty good rule in general, and I've tried to stick by it. I think you find that life is uncomfortable enough, and it's hard enough to be comfortable in your own skin, so why make it harder by wearing uncomfortable clothes? The next one is to make your bed. My mother would tell me that if I had a cluttered desk, it meant that I had a cluttered mind. And what she didn't realize is that led to a lot of procrastinating in college, which may be not intended effect, but I have learned that making my bed, at the very least, if nothing else goes right in the day, at least I've done that. So, moving on to some more serious ones. Finding what you love and love them outwardly. I spent a lot of high school trying to be cool and trying to fit in. And I was a nerd, and I can say that here because you were all nerds. And nerd used to be a derogatory term, but then I realized it was just a word that meant somebody who really loved something and somebody who really cared about something and spent a lot of time with it. And in the last few years, I've discovered that, you know what, I really do just love NPR, and I do love pop. And those are things that I love very outwardly. And because of it, I found people who love the same things, and I found people who love me because I love those things. And both are much more wholesome additions to my life. The next one is to start your day with gratitude, to end your day with gratitude, or basically just remember to be grateful as often and as much as you can. I kept a little gratitude jar next to my bed, and there's no rules around it. I just write a little sticky note for something that I'm grateful for. I started it at the beginning of business school, and it's worked pretty well for me. At the very least, it helps give me some perspective at the beginning and the end of the day. So, moving on. This comes from my sister. When I was 12, everything was bad, and the word of the decade was awkward. And I don't know if you grew up in the early 2000s, but that was a pretty awkward time for most of us, I would hope. When I was 13, my sister sat me down, and I think she was just sick of hearing me say the word awkward. And she said, you know what, Sukriti? Life is awkward. Get a helmet. And so, I've really learned to embrace the awkward and to really lean into it. Everything is awkward. Crop circles are awkward, networking is awkward, finding a job is awkward, being yourself at school can be awkward. But lean into it, because everybody else is just as awkward as you are. And the more you can be comfortable with it, the easier your life is going to be. This one kind of goes along with the empathy. I think that empathy and kindness are linked. I think they're twins. And I've discovered that everything is much easier when you start with a place of kindness. This goes back to one of the rules that kept coming up in these conversations, which is don't assume. Don't assume bad intent. Don't assume that you know what someone's going through. More often than not, you don't. I think Professor Epley wrote a book on this, which is you probably don't know what other people are thinking, so just ask and start from a place of kindness. All right. So I wouldn't be a good business school student or a recovering consultant if I didn't leave you with a framework to think about. So last week, my grandfather passed away, and we were very close. We were born on the same day, and spent a lot of time with him growing up. And we used to go for walks together every day. My grandfather would walk 15 kilometers. I guess I really only knew him in his retirement, so he did a lot of walking. There's a lot of retirement activities involved. And we would go to the park by our house in Delhi, and eventually we would have 10-kilometer walks, and it would be every round of the park was about a kilometer. And I knew that he was so proud to have me there because he would show me off to all of his park friends, and he'd be wearing his smart little cap and his walking cane, and we'd stop every so often for him to introduce me to all of his friends. And we would do the first 5 rounds, and it was pretty good, and I would keep up. But then I'd start to get a little tired, and he told me that the way that he thought about the last 4 rounds really helped to make it a much more fulfilling experience. he was much more present for the last half of the walk. So the first round, he called the slog round. You know what? You're more than halfway, but it still sucks. You grind it, and you guys all know what that's like. You did it through recruiting, you did it to get here, you did it in your jobs, you're gonna do it this summer if you go to investment banking, sorry. You did that yourself. That's the slog round, and that is just the thing you gotta get through. But then you get through it, and you get a little confidence. You see a little bit of progress, and you keep going. And it's that 70 to 80% that you've got. And maybe you're tired. Maybe you don't want to keep going, but you do, because you know that there's an end in sight. Then you get to the full confidence round. It's too late to turn back now. You've got it. The end is in sight. You're tired. Your legs hurt. Your brain's on fire. But now you've got the support of the people around you, and you've got the measurement of your success so far, and you know you're going to get there. And then when you do, you get the victory lap. That's the one with all your cheerleaders and the people who supported you. And that's the one where you can take your triumphant lap around the park, wave goodbye to your friends, and move on to the next thing. So I hope that you remember your 4 rounds for the rest of your time in business school and beyond, whatever other challenges you have. The last thing that I wanted to leave you with is the first article that I mentioned, that Bloomberg article. One of the rules that the woman wrote was to give living eulogies. So not just telling people that you care about them, but telling people really and truly what you care about them, how much you care about them, what it is that makes them special to you, and letting them know frequently what those things are. So I've learned to give those living eulogies. In the early 2000s, as I mentioned, was a pretty awkward time. That was the time of MySpace and LiveJournal. I don't know if you guys remember that. I spent a lot of time blogging, which was not cool at all. And I wrote a couple of blogs about my friends and what I cared about them, and that was way too much. I don't suggest it. I just went all in. I went 0 to 100. It was too much. But I did learn to pretty frequently tell the people that I love them, and tell them what it is that I love about them. Last year, one of my best friends passed away from stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I didn't get to see him in the last year. But I do take some comfort in the knowledge that I told him very often that I loved him, and that I cared about him, and what it is that I loved about him. I told my grandfather the same thing, and I try to do that as often as I can to the people around me. So to my mother, I think she knows this, but I will say that my relationship with my mother exponentially grew when she learned how to text with emojis, so that has really helped. And I love her for her grace under pressure and for being my guru in everything forever. I tell my sister that she basically has always been a mother because she's not spending a moment without thinking about the people around her. And I wanted to do that today. To Elise and Tunde for showing strength and vulnerability at the same time. For Lindsay for being a reactive personality but also very even keel. For Natalie for being really brave and finding your path and finding a way to be yourself in a world that maybe doesn't quite know what to do with you. And to so many others of you who I have met who inspire me every day. I hope that you leave today and you take your 4 rounds into the rest of your lives, but that you choose to tell people that they matter to you and why. Because last week I found myself telling my sister that you can never tell somebody that you love them enough. And I've tried to tell people in whatever love language I know that I love them and why. And I really hope that you